What kind of man commands billions with a single signature, yet has never once smiled in victory? Meet Alexander Kane, the man Wall Street whispers about like a legend, and a curse. Tonight, his empire grows. But what if the one thing he can't control isn't a hostile takeover, but his own heart? The boardroom was silent. Not the silence of respect, no. This was the silence of men and women too afraid to breathe in the presence of their king. Alexander Kane sat at the head of the obsidian conference table, posture sharp as a blade. His tailored black suit seemed cut from shadows themselves, his eyes glacial blue, unblinking, assessing. Before him, projected on the massive glass screen, was the carcass of another fallen empire, Belmont Industries, a once proud competitor now reduced to ash under his command. Effective immediately, Alexander's voice cut through the stillness, low and lethal. Belmont's assets, patents, and subsidiaries belong to Kane Global. A whisper of awe rippled through the room. Billions shifted hands in that moment. Jobs, futures, entire lives, reshaped by a man who spoke as if he were merely moving chess pieces. One board member dared to clear his throat. "Sir, with Belmont's fall, we've effectively eliminated our last significant rival in Asia." Alexander's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. It was the faintest acknowledgement that his empire had grown. He leaned back, fingers steepled. "Good. Fear is more effective than competition. Let the rest of the market remember, crossing Kane Global is financial suicide." Applause broke out, polite but trembling. They admired him, yes, but admiration laced with terror. For Alexander Kane was not a man, they whispered. He was an empire made flesh. And yet, when the room cleared and the doors shut, leaving him alone, silence pressed in differently, colder. He stared at his own reflection in the glass wall, city lights sprawling behind him like jewels scattered across velvet night. The view should have satisfied him. It always did. But tonight, it felt hollow. A strange thought intruded. Is this all there is? He shoved it down. Emotion was weakness. A knock came at the door. His assistant entered nervously. "Sir, your next consultant has arrived. She insisted on seeing you tonight." Alexander frowned. "At this hour?" "Yes, sir. She wouldn't take no for an answer." That was bold. Nobody insisted on anything with Alexander Kane. Nobody dared. He turned his gaze toward the door, irritation sharpening. Whoever this consultant was, she was about to learn that crossing the Ice King of Wall Street came with a price. But when the doors opened and the mysterious woman stepped in, her presence hit him like a storm. Confidence in her stride, fire in her eyes, an aura that unsettled the air itself. For the first time in years, Alexander Kane felt something he couldn't calculate. Curiosity, and he hated it. If you are enjoying the story, kindly subscribe, click the like button and drop your comment. Let's begin. The boardroom door swung open, and she walked in as if the night itself had obeyed her summons. Her heels clicked lightly against the marble floor, each step purposeful. She wore a fitted navy suit, professional, polished, but her presence carried something that didn't belong to the corporate world. Fire, energy, a quiet power that unsettled the air itself. Alexander Kane, who had stared down presidents and kings without flinching, felt his gaze tighten on her as if she were an equation he couldn't solve. "Elena Vale," she said, her voice warm but edged with iron. She didn't bow, didn't falter, just extended her hand as though she had every right to stand before him. He didn't take it, not at first. Instead, he studied her, ice blue eyes narrowing. "You insisted on meeting me at this hour. Why?" Her smile was faint, almost amused. "Because time is running out. And whether you admit it or not, Mr. Kane, you need me." The audacity. Nobody spoke to him like that. Not his board, not his rivals, not even heads of state. He was the Ice King of Wall Street, feared, obeyed. Yet here was a consultant he hadn't hired, telling him he needed her. He leaned back in his chair, masking intrigue with disdain. I don't recall authorizing your contract. You didn't. She placed a slim folder on the table. Your board did. They recognized that Belmont's fall left more than just gaps in your empire. It left cracks. Alexander's jaw tightened. He hated that word. Cracks. Weakness. Still, he flipped open the folder. Inside were numbers, charts, reports, but not just data, projections, predictions that bordered on impossible. How did you... He stopped himself. Elena's gaze held his, steady and unnerving. Some things don't fit in your spreadsheets, Mr. Kane. Some problems aren't solved with hostile takeovers. They require a different skill set. For a fraction of a second, he thought her eyes shimmered, gold flickering beneath hazel, vanishing as quickly as it came. He blinked, uncertain. Impossible. You're overconfident, he said flatly. And overconfidence gets people destroyed. Then maybe I'm exactly the consultant you need. Silence stretched between them, charged like a storm building in the distance. Alexander's world was made of hard lines and sharp edges, yet Elena's presence blurred them, as if rules bent subtly around her. Finally he rose, towering over her. Very well, convince me. If you fail, you'll regret stepping into this room. Her smile widened, not with fear, but challenge. I don't fail, Mr. Kane. She reached for the folder, her fingers brushing his hand for the briefest moment. And a jolt shot through him. Not physical, not electrical, but something deeper. Something primal. His pulse, steady for years, stumbled. His chest tightened. He pulled back instantly, mask snapping into place, but his mind reeled. What was that? Elena tilted her head, watching him carefully, as if she knew exactly what had just happened. Shall we get to work? Outside the boardroom, unseen by both of them, the city lights flickered. A ripple passed through the night as if some hidden barrier had been breached. Somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, She's revealed herself, and now the hunt begins. The city's skyline glimmered outside Kane Global's headquarters, but inside tension crackled hotter than lightning. Executives lined the polished obsidian table, their faces tight with expectation. They'd seen Alexander Kane dismantle giants, silence rivals, reduce empires to dust with a few choice words. To challenge him here was unthinkable. And yet, Elena Vale stood at the opposite end of the table, her posture unshaken, eyes lit with that strange fire that had unsettled him since the moment she walked into his world. Alexander's voice was calm, razor sharp. Our strategy is flawless. We consolidate Belmont's assets, cut 30% of staff, and absorb their patents into Kane Global's core sectors. The faster we consume, the stronger we get. Simple. The room murmured its approval. The Ice King had spoken, but Elena didn't nod. She didn't yield. She stepped forward. That's not strength, Mr. Kane. That's greed. And greed blinds men, until they walk straight into ruin. The air shifted. Executives stiffened. One man coughed nervously, eyes darting between them. No one spoke to Alexander Kane like that. His icy gaze locked on her. You're questioning my judgment? I'm correcting it. She placed her folder on the table, flipping it open to reveal graphs, projections, bold red numbers that cut through his perfect plan like a blade. If you gut Belmont's staff, you lose key developers who created the patents you're so eager to own. They walk, and your acquisitions turn into hollow shells. You'll choke on your own feast. Whispers rippled around the room. Some executives leaned in, curious. Others looked like they were watching someone step off a cliff. Alexander leaned back, studying her. He should have fired her on the spot, humiliated her, crushed her under the weight of his empire. And yet, he didn't. Because deep down, part of him knew she was right. Go on, he said softly. Elena met his gaze, unflinching. Keep the staff. Integrate them. Treat them like innovators, not acquisitions. Invest in them, and they'll double your return in 5 years. Or fire them, and watch your empire crack from the inside. The boardroom was silent, holding its breath. For the first time in years, Alexander Kane felt his control slip, not outwardly, but inward. Something stirred, dangerous and unfamiliar. Admiration, and something else. A spark. He didn't show it. He couldn't. Instead, he rose slowly, his presence filling the room. "Bold words," he said, voice deceptively calm. "From a consultant who's been here less than 24 hours. Elena smiled faintly. "Boldness is the only language you understand." A sharp intake of breath echoed from the boardroom's edge. The entire room seemed to freeze, waiting for the hammer to fall. But Alexander didn't strike. He didn't crush her. Instead, he found himself intrigued. "Very well," he said finally. "We'll test your strategy. If it fails, the blame falls squarely on you." Elena inclined her head. "I accept." The meeting ended, but Alexander lingered, eyes following her as she gathered her papers. That spark inside him hadn't faded. It was growing, dangerous, relentless. And as she left the boardroom, his reflection in the glass wall shimmered. Not his face, but something darker, something watching. For the first time, Alexander Kane wondered if the cracks in his empire were no longer financial, but supernatural. The glass wall still shimmered faintly, though the boardroom was empty now. Alexander Kane remained alone, watching the city's skyline pulse against the night. His reflection stared back, sharp suit, cold eyes, the image of control. But for a fleeting second he could have sworn it wasn't his reflection at all. Something darker had stared at him, something that smiled when he did not. He blinked. Gone. "Stress," he muttered, dismissing the thought. But the truth unsettled him. Stress had never rattled Alexander Kane before. A knock broke the silence. Elena Vale. She stepped back into the boardroom, calm, collected, her presence carrying that same strange weight. The air shifted when she entered, as if the room bent subtly toward her. "You didn't dismiss me," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," Alexander replied, his voice smooth, calculated. "I didn't." Her lips curved. Interesting. He should have ended the conversation there. He should have crushed the spark she'd ignited. Instead, he found himself studying her, not the cut of her suit, not her poise, but something beneath, something humming like hidden fire. And that's when he heard it. A whisper. Low, indistinct, curling around his thoughts. His gaze darted to the corner of the room. No one was there. He masked the flicker of unease instantly. "Why are you really here, Ms. Vale?" Elena tilted her head, her eyes almost too steady. "Because your empire is about to face something money can't buy your way out of." There it was again. Light. Faint, golden, flickering at the edge of her gaze like sunlight caught in glass. His breath stilled. Impossible. He pushed back from the table, rising, looming over her. "You enjoy games, but I don't. This isn't a game, Alexander." Her voice was quiet, but sharp. "You're not the only one with enemies. And if you're not careful, yours will find mine, and destroy us both." The words shouldn't have touched him. He didn't believe in fear, in prophecy, in fate. But something in her tone, in her presence, in that strange flicker of light that no one else seemed to notice. Something crawled beneath his skin. He dismissed her with a curt nod, retreating to his office. Yet even there, he couldn't escape it. Papers rustled when the windows were shut. Shadows stretched where they shouldn't. The whisper followed him, threading through the silence like silk. And through it all, one image haunted him. Elena's eyes, steady, unafraid, shimmering with that impossible glow. That night, long after he should have been asleep, Alexander jolted awake in his penthouse. His room was drenched in silver moonlight. At the foot of his bed stood a figure cloaked in shadow, eyes burning red. And behind the intruder's voice he heard it again, the whisper. She's awakened it. And now, Alexander Kane, so have you. Alexander's heart pounded against his ribs, though he'd never admit it aloud. The shadowed intruder at the foot of his bed was gone, vanished with the first flicker of dawn. Had it been real? Or just exhaustion twisting his mind? By evening, he'd shoved the memory down where all his fears lived. Buried, locked, ignored. Kane Global's annual gala demanded perfection, and Alexander Kane would not allow cracks to show. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and champagne. The city's most powerful gathered here tonight. Politicians, CEOs, foreign royals, all waiting for their king to descend from his throne and bless them with his icy presence. Alexander made his entrance like a man carved from marble. Crisp tuxedo, expression unreadable, every eye in the room tilting toward him. Power radiated from his silence. Yet beneath the polished exterior something gnawed, because he saw her, Elena Vale, across the ballroom. She wasn't draped in wealth like the others, but in midnight silk that shimmered like moonlight itself. And once again, the air seemed to bend toward her, as if she carried her own gravity. She shouldn't have been here. Consultants didn't belong in Kane Global's gala, yet here she was, standing like she had every right. Their eyes met. And in that instant, the chandelier above Alexander gave a sudden, violent shudder. The crowd gasped as the massive crystal fixture snapped loose, plummeting toward him in a storm of glittering shards and deadly weight. Time slowed. He should have moved. But for the first time in his life, Alexander Kane froze. Shock, confusion, the whisper of last night's warning, she's awakened it, all locking him in place. And then, light, golden, searing, rushing past him in a wave. Elena, her hand outstretched, her eyes blazing with that impossible glow. The chandelier jerked midair, suspended, the shards trembling inches from his face. For one breathless moment, the impossible was undeniable. Elena Vale was holding back a mountain of glass and steel with nothing but will. The light winked out. The chandelier slammed into the ground beside him, shattering in a thunderous crash. Gasps and screams filled the ballroom. Guests rushed forward, shaken but unharmed. Alexander stood motionless, chest heaving, his gaze locked on her. She lowered her hand as if nothing had happened. No one else seemed to notice her act. They were too busy panicking, too busy thanking God for a narrow escape. But Alexander saw. He knew. And he would never forget. He stalked toward her, fury and disbelief warring in his chest. "What did you just do?" he hissed, low enough only she could hear. Her eyes didn't waver. "I saved your life." "You..." His words faltered. For the first time in years, the Ice King of Wall Street didn't have language sharp enough to cut through the chaos. Because deep down, he knew what he'd witnessed wasn't possible. Elena leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not ready for the truth, Alexander, but it's coming for you, whether you want it or not." And as she walked away, his reflection in the shattered crystal at his feet flickered again. His face, split by a smile he had not made. The last of the gala guests filed out under flashing cameras and shaken whispers, but Alexander Kane remained in the wreckage, glass shards glittering at his feet, his reflection still fractured, mocking him. That flicker, that smile that wasn't his, it refused to leave his mind. And then there was her, Elena Vale. She walked away from the chaos as if she hadn't just suspended death above his head with a gesture no human being should be capable of, as if saving him was routine. Alexander's jaw tightened. He didn't chase people. People chased him. But tonight, for the first time in years, he felt something close to hunger. The next morning, his assistant entered his office, visibly trembling. "Sir, you asked me to arrange a private dinner with Miss Vale?" Alexander didn't remember giving the order, but the words tasted right. "Yes, tonight." When Elena arrived, she wasn't dressed for Wall Street dominance or gala spectacle. She wore simple elegance, dark green silk that caught the candlelight of the rooftop restaurant he'd reserved entirely for them. Manhattan sprawled below like a kingdom at his feet. "You don't waste time," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from him. Her eyes, steady as ever, didn't flinch under his stare. "Last night," Alexander said, cutting through pretense, "you did something impossible." Her fingers stilled against the stem of her wine glass. "You shouldn't ask questions you aren't ready to hear answered. That chandelier would have killed me. Everyone else saw chance. I saw control, your control. Explain." She shook her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Dinner with Alexander Kane, the man who dissects empires. And you think I'll hand you my secrets like a quarterly report?" It should have irritated him. Instead, it fascinated him. No one denied him answers. No one warned him. Yet Elena leaned forward, lowering her voice until the city's hum seemed to fade. "Getting closer to me is dangerous," she said. "For you, for everything you've built. There are rules older than your company, Alexander. Powers that don't bend to contracts." His lips curved into something dangerously close to a smile. "I've broken every rule that's ever stood in my way." "That's what scares me," she whispered. The air between them thickened, an invisible current crackling across the table. His hand moved unconsciously toward hers. For a moment, her composure cracked, and he saw it. A flicker of light beneath her skin, pulsing faintly like a second heartbeat. Then, boom. A sharp pop of electricity exploded nearby. The rooftop lights flickered violently, plunging them into momentary darkness. Across the skyline, the glass of a nearby tower spidered with cracks, as though responding to a force that had nothing to do with wind or weight. When the lights steadied, Elena's expression was grave. "They've felt it. They know you've seen too much." "Who?" Alexander demanded. Her answer was barely audible. "The ones who don't forgive." Before he could press further, a shard of glass from the cracked skyscraper broke loose, slicing through the night air, aimed directly at their table. And this time, Alexander wasn't sure if she'd save him or let the truth strike. The shard cut through the night like a silver bullet spinning toward the table. Alexander didn't move, there wasn't time. But Elena did. Her hand snapped upward, palm out. The glass froze inches from his face, trembling in the air like it had struck an invisible wall. For a breathless second, Alexander saw it, lines of light unfurling from her skin, glowing veins of power that pulsed like molten fire. Then the shard disintegrated, turning to dust that scattered on the rooftop breeze. Silence. Alexander's chest rose and fell with sharp control, his icy composure cracking. He leaned forward, voice low and demanding. "What are you?" Elena's eyes glistened with something heavy, not guilt, not shame, burden. "The question isn't what I am. It's what I'm sworn to protect." Her words lodged in him like a hook. He had spent his life prying open boardrooms, governments, markets. Nothing was beyond his reach. Yet here was a woman who wielded the impossible and still spoke as if her secrets were beyond even him. "Explain," he ordered, softer this time. Elena's gaze flickered to the skyline, where the cracked skyscraper loomed like an omen. Long before Kane Global, long before Wall Street, there were orders sworn to guard the balance of power. My family, my bloodline, is the last of one. Alexander frowned. "Guard what?" "A relic. Ancient. Older than your history books will ever admit. It was sealed away, hidden so it would never be used. My blood is its key, and that makes me a target." Her tone darkened. "They've found me. The ones who hunt in shadow." The shard cut through the night like a silver bullet spinning toward the table. Alexander didn't move, there wasn't time. But Elena did. Her hand snapped upward, palm out. The glass froze inches from his face, trembling in the air like it had struck an invisible wall. For a breathless second, Alexander saw it, lines of light unfurling from her skin, glowing veins of power that pulsed like molten fire. Then the shard disintegrated, turning to dust that scattered on the rooftop breeze. Silence. Alexander's chest rose and fell with sharp control, his icy composure cracking. He leaned forward, voice low and demanding. "What are you?" Elena's eyes glistened with something heavy, not guilt, not shame, burden. "The question isn't what I am. It's what I'm sworn to protect." Her words lodged in him like a hook. He had spent his life prying open boardrooms, governments, markets. Nothing was beyond his reach. Yet here was a woman who wielded the impossible and still spoke as if her secrets were beyond even him. "Explain," he ordered, softer this time. Elena's gaze flickered to the skyline, where the cracked skyscraper loomed like an omen. Long before Kane Global, long before Wall Street, there were orders sworn to guard the balance of power. My family, my bloodline, is the last of one. Alexander frowned. Guard what? A relic. Ancient. Older than your history books will ever admit. It was sealed away, hidden so it would never be used. My blood is its key, and that makes me a target. Her tone darkened. They've found me. The ones who hunt in shadow. And now because you've seen too much, because you matter, they'll come for you too. Alexander leaned back, studying her as if she were another empire to be acquired. You're telling me your enemies can topple corporations with falling glass and flickering lights? I'm telling you, she said, her voice trembling with controlled fire, that if they get what I guard, there won't be corporations, or cities, or you. The weight of her words pressed against his walls of logic, threatening to crack them. He wanted to scoff, to dismiss her as delusional, but the taste of dust on his tongue, the memory of that frozen shard hanging between them, silenced the doubt. And then a shadow moved. Not from the flickering lights, not from the city's hum. A shape, tall, unnatural, edges bleeding into the air itself, slipped along the far rooftop like a living void. Alexander's instincts screamed predator. Elena's face went pale. They've crossed the threshold. Who? Alexander hissed. The Shadow Order, she whispered. And they never come quietly. The rooftop lights sputtered again, and this time, they didn't come back. Darkness swallowed the world, thick and absolute. Only Elena's faint glowing veins gave off light, and in that light, Alexander saw them, figures emerging from the night, hooded, faceless, moving with inhuman silence. 5, 10, more. For the first time in his empire-forged life, Alexander Kane realized the battlefield had shifted. This wasn't about mergers or takeovers. This was war, ancient, hidden, merciless. One of the shadows hissed, voice like 1,000 knives scraping glass. The key is ours. And before Alexander could move, black tendrils lashed out, wrapping around Elena's arm, dragging her toward the edge of the rooftop. The black tendrils coiled tighter around Elena's arm, dragging her toward the edge of the rooftop. Her heels scraped against the concrete as she fought, but their strength was unnatural, an abyss pulling her toward oblivion. Let her go! Alexander's voice cracked the night. The shadows didn't listen. They hissed, their forms pulsing like living smoke. Elena's glow flared, veins blazing with golden light as she summoned a blast of force that shredded the tendrils, scattering them into dust. She stumbled forward, breathing hard, eyes locking with his. You shouldn't have stayed, she whispered. Now they'll never stop. Before Alexander could respond, the air split open with a sound like tearing fabric. A jagged rift in the skyline spilling darkness, and from it stepped a man in a crimson-lined suit, sharp, polished, yet wrong. His presence carried the weight of power, but not the kind Alexander commanded in boardrooms. This was primal, corrupted. Elena's lips curled with fury. Warlock. The man smiled, eyes black as pitch. Not just a warlock, dear Vale, a partner. His gaze slid to Alexander with chilling precision. and you are standing in my way. Name, Alexander demanded, his instinct for enemies never failing. Lucian Dre. He bowed mockingly. CEO of Dre Corp, and soon, the man who buries Kane Global. The words hit harder than any spell. Alexander knew Dre Corp, a rival conglomerate, cunning and ruthless, always circling like a vulture. But this? This was no corporate maneuver. This was alliance with shadows. Lucian's grin widened. Your empire was impressive, Kane, but it's built on glass and greed. Mine will be eternal, bound to power beyond your comprehension, and all I need. He turned his gaze back to Elena. Is her. The shadows stirred, crawling closer. Elena raised her hands, a shield of golden light flaring around them both. He's bound himself to the order, she explained quickly. They feed him influence in your world while he opens doors for them in mine. Alexander's pulse pounded. It was the perfect merger, business war fused with ancient sorcery. His rival wasn't just trying to take his company, he was trying to consume his world. Why me? Alexander demanded, fury threading his words. Lucian's smile sharpened. Because power hates a void. You built too much, Kane. Too fast. The Order wants to burn it down, and I'll rise from the ashes. The shadows surged, hammering against Elena's shield. Cracks spidered through the golden barrier, glowing fractures threatening to shatter. Alexander stood behind her, fists clenched, helpless for the first time in years. Tell me how to fight, he growled. You can't, Elena hissed, straining under the weight. Sweat beaded at her temple. This war isn't yours. The hell it isn't. He stepped forward, bracing her shield with his hands as though sheer will might hold it together. You said I matter. Then tell me why. Her eyes flickered to his, torn between fear and truth. Because your bloodline isn't ordinary either, Alexander. The words detonated inside him, but before he could demand answers, the shield shattered in a burst of sparks. Darkness poured in. Lucian's voice echoed like a verdict. Kane Global falls tomorrow, and when it does, so will she. The shadows collapsed into the rift, dragging Lucian with them. The rooftop fell silent, only the broken glass and city hum remaining. Alexander turned to Elena, rage and confusion warring in his chest. What did you mean? My bloodline. But Elena didn't answer. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as though she'd revealed too much. Before she could speak, Alexander's phone buzzed. A single message from his CFO lit the screen. Dre Corp launched a hostile takeover, stock plummeting. We're under attack. Alexander's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles blanched. The words glared up at him like a declaration of war. Dre Corp launched a hostile takeover, stock plummeting. We're under attack. He exhaled slowly, fury simmering beneath his ice. Lucian didn't just declare war in shadows, he's striking in daylight. Elena's voice trembled. That's what makes him dangerous. He walks in both worlds, and now you're caught in the crossfire. Alexander shoved the phone into his pocket, every instinct screaming for control. He was the man who crushed empires, who turned rivals into ashes. But tonight, for the first time, the battlefield wasn't just numbers and contracts. It was blood, shadows, and secrets. He turned to Elena. Tell me what you meant about my bloodline. She hesitated, eyes full of something he had never seen directed at him before, fear. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. His voice was a command, but under it ran a note he despised admitting. Plea. Elena's hand lifted, hovering just shy of his chest. There's a reason you've risen faster, higher, colder than any man before you. Power recognizes power. Your blood. It isn't just human. Somewhere in your line, magic touched it. That's why you draw it out of me. Why the Order wants you broken. His chest tightened, anger and disbelief colliding. You're telling me I've been playing God with companies because of some mystical inheritance? You've been playing God because you are closer to one than you think. The words cracked something inside him, a lifetime of control splintering. He stepped closer, heat rolling off him despite the night chill. Then use it. Use me. Show me what I am. Elena shook her head, backing slightly, though her breath caught in a way that betrayed her composure. It's dangerous. You're dangerous. If I, lose control around you, then stop running. He cut in, voice rough. Their eyes locked, ice and fire colliding, pulling, refusing to let go. And then it happened. Alexander closed the space, his mouth claiming hers with a force that startled even him. It wasn't calculated, wasn't planned. It was instinct, raw and undeniable. For a heartbeat, Elena resisted, her hands pressed against his chest. But the moment his touch deepened, something broke inside her. She kissed him back, fierce, unrestrained, golden light sparking at her fingertips, racing up her arms, spilling into the night. The rooftop blazed with magic, the city skyline reflecting shards of fire and gold. Her power didn't just surge, it multiplied, amplified. His presence drew it higher, sharper, more alive than she'd ever felt. She tore her lips from his, gasping, "Alexander, stop. You're making it stronger. I can't control." But he didn't move, his breath mingling with hers, his hand cupping her jaw. "Then don't control it. Show me everything." The wind howled, the very air bending to the storm between them. Lights flickered across the city, car alarms shrieked blocks away, and for a terrifying, intoxicating moment, it felt as if their kiss could bring Manhattan to its knees. Elena's eyes glowed molten gold, her voice breaking. "This is why I warned you. Together, we're a beacon. They'll come faster now, stronger. We've announced ourselves." Before Alexander could respond, the rooftop floor beneath them cracked, splitting open in a jagged line. From the fissure rose smoke, cold and black, coiling into a shape that hissed with hunger. The Shadow Order hadn't waited. They'd already found their beacon. The rooftop shuddered beneath them, concrete groaning as the fissure widened. Black smoke poured upward like venomous ink spilling across the night, twisting into shapes. Faces without eyes, claws without flesh. The Shadow Order had answered their beacon. Alexander pulled Elena behind him instinctively, though he knew it was absurd. She was the one with power. But the protective urge was primal, unshakable. "Stay back," he growled. Elena's hand tightened on his arm. "It's too late. They've marked you now." The smoke surged, hissing words that slithered inside their skulls. "The key belongs to us. The bloodline breaks tonight." Elena raised her hands, golden fire sparking to life. The shield burst outward, colliding with the smoke. But for every tendril she burned, two more rose in its place. Her magic was fierce. Alexander could feel it radiating off her, a storm barely caged. But it wavered, faltering beneath the sheer number pressing in. "Why are they after you?" Alexander demanded over the roar of energy. "What's the relic worth?" Her lips parted, the truth tumbling free as if the fight had stripped away her restraint. "It isn't just a relic, it's a seal. It binds something worse. If it's broken, if they get me, it all comes undone." "Then we don't let them," Alexander snapped. "You don't understand." Her voice cracked, pain lacing through it. "If I choose you, if I give in to this, they'll never stop hunting you. You won't just lose your company, Alexander. You'll lose your life. Everything you've built will turn to ash." The rooftop blazed with golden sparks as she shoved another wave of shadows back. Tears glistened in her eyes despite the fire. "That's the cost of me." For a moment, silence roared louder than the storm. Alexander looked at her, really looked. And in her trembling strength, in her willingness to stand alone against darkness, he saw something no prophet, no empire, no crown of glass and steel had ever given him. Meaning. He stepped closer, his voice cutting like iron through chaos. "Then let it burn." Her eyes widened. "I've built empires from nothing before, I can do it again, but you?" He cupped her face, thumb brushing against her skin. "There's only one of you. and I'd rather risk everything than lose you." The words shattered her defenses. For the first time, Elena Vale, the last of her line, the keeper of an ancient seal, let her heart speak. "Alexander, my heart was yours the moment you refused to fear me." And then, with the world collapsing around them, she kissed him again, this time not with warning or restraint, but with surrender. The rooftop exploded with light. His presence amplified her magic until the golden blaze became a shield of fire, surging outward in a dome that incinerated the shadows. The smoke shrieked, retreating back into the fissure, dragging the night's chill with it. When silence finally fell, they stood together in the center of scorched concrete, breathless, hands clasped, hearts unguarded. But the reprieve didn't last. Alexander's phone buzzed again, vibrating violently against his chest. He pulled it free, the screen glowing with an emergency alert from his headquarters. "Urgent. Draycorp breach successful. Kane Tower compromised." As he lifted his gaze to Elena, the skyline flickered, and Kane Tower, his empire's crown jewel, went dark floor by floor, until only its silhouette remained against the city lights. The Shadow Order wasn't retreating. They were already inside his kingdom. The night sky still glowed with the aftershocks of Elena's magic, but Alexander's gaze was fixed on the city's crown jewel, Kane Tower. Its windows dimmed floor by floor, the blacked-out monolith standing like a tombstone in the skyline. His empire was bleeding. "We have to move," Elena urged, her hand clutching his. "The Shadow Order won't strike only from the dark. Lucien is in your world now. He'll use every weakness against you." Alexander's jaw tightened. "My company has no weakness." But when the sun rose, casting cold light over Manhattan, his words proved hollow. The boardroom of Kane Tower, once a fortress of silence under his command, was restless, buzzing with whispers and sharp glares. Executives sat stiff around the obsidian table, papers and glowing screens filled with plummeting numbers. Lucien Drey's hostile takeover had struck fast, slicing billions from Kane Global overnight. For the first time, Alexander's throne was unsteady. "Mr. Kane," his CFO began, voice clipped with feigned respect. "The situation demands focus, yet we hear troubling reports. Late-night absences, meetings abandoned, resources diverted." His gaze slid toward Elena, who stood quietly at Alexander's side like a shadow of defiance. "This consultant appears to have become your priority." A ripple of agreement echoed around the table. Words like reckless, distracted, compromised floated in the air. Alexander's eyes narrowed, frost sharpening his tone. "Are you suggesting my leadership is in question?" One of the senior board members straightened, emboldened by the murmurs. "We are suggesting, sir, that if Kane Global is to survive, it may require a steadier hand at the helm." The words were daggers. A coup. In his own boardroom. Elena's hand brushed his arm, a whisper of warning. "They're already under Lucian's influence." Her golden gaze flickered and Alexander caught it. The faint shadow curling at the edges of one executive's sleeve. Unnatural. Writhing. The order was here, hiding inside his empire's heart. "You dare plot against me?" Alexander said coldly, standing to his full height. "While Draycorp circles like a vulture, you'd slit your king's throat to offer the corpse?" The CFO smirked thinly. "Kings fall, Mr. Kane. Companies adapt. We're merely ensuring Kane Global survives, with or without you." The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then a crack split across the glass wall, as though unseen hands pressed against it. Elena stepped forward, her voice low, dangerous. "They're already inside." Shadows seeped from the corners of the boardroom, spilling across the polished floor. Executives gasped, stumbling back, except for three, whose faces twisted with something inhuman, eyes black and unblinking. Board members, allies, betrayers. The Shadow Order had not just breached his tower, they had infected it. Alexander's empire was collapsing from both sides, business and magic, betrayal, and war. He glanced at Elena, the chaos reflecting in her golden-lit eyes. "What do we do?" Her reply was grim. "Survive this room first." The glass wall shattered, raining shards like knives as a cloaked figure stepped into the boardroom. His voice dripped with triumph. "Step aside, Kane. Your company and your woman belong to Dracorp now." The boardroom floor glittered with shattered glass, every shard catching the city lights like jagged diamonds. Executives cowered, their corporate masks stripped away by terror, while 3 traitors stood unflinching, their shadows writhing unnaturally across the walls. The cloaked intruder advanced, his presence thick with malice. "Step aside, Kane," he said again, voice curling like smoke. "Your empire is already ours. The order moves faster than you ever imagined." His hood shifted, revealing a sliver of a cruel smile. And as for the witch, his gaze cut to Elena. "She belongs to Lucian." Alexander's blood turned to fire. No one laid claim to what was his. "Get out of my building," he growled. The man laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. At his gesture, the 3 shadow-tainted executives lunged, their bodies twisted by dark energy. Screens flickered, lights burst, and the polished boardroom dissolved into chaos. Alexander moved first. Years of ruthless negotiation had forged a predator's reflexes, but this was no deal to close. This was survival. He blocked a strike, drove his fist into one man's jaw, but the blow landed with unnatural resistance as though the bones were stone. Elena was already moving, her eyes blazing gold. A shimmer of energy wrapped around her hand as she whispered an incantation, sending a burst of light crashing into one of the attackers. He screamed, shadows burning away like smoke in sunlight. For a moment, Alexander froze. He had seen her strength before, hints and flashes, but never unleashed. She was fire incarnate, terrifying, beautiful, unstoppable. "Elena." "Focus," she snapped, hurling him a chair as another corrupted executive lunged. He caught it instinctively, driving it like a shield against the attacker. Wood splintered, blood sprayed, and Alexander realized something with brutal clarity. Without her, he wouldn't last 5 minutes in this war. The cloaked figure raised his hand, and the temperature plummeted. Frost crawled across the table, computers cracked, and the city beyond the shattered glass seemed to bow to his power. "You cannot win, Kane. You're fighting 2 wars, one with your dying company, another with powers beyond your comprehension. Choose, your empire or your life." Alexander's chest heaved. For the first time in years, he felt the edge of defeat. But then his eyes met Elena's, steady, fierce, unyielding. "I don't choose," he said, voice like steel. "I take both." Together they struck. Elena's magic flared, golden light colliding with black shadows in a violent explosion. Alexander drove his fist into the cloaked man's chest, the impact fueled not by strength alone, but by the surge of her power flowing through him, amplifying him just as their kiss had. The intruder staggered, cloak tearing, a hiss of fury escaping. "So, the bond has begun." His eyes burned red as he retreated into the shadows. "Lucienne will be pleased. The game changes now." Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breaths of terrified executives. Glass crunched beneath Alexander's shoes as he stepped forward, scanning the room that had once been his domain. Half his board cowered like sheep. The other half had tried to kill him. And beyond that, an empire under siege. War had come to Kane Global, and it wasn't leaving. Alexander turned to Elena, his voice low. "If I'm to win this war, I'll need more than your magic." His hand tightened into a fist. "I'll need you." But before Elena could answer, her phone vibrated, an unknown number flashing on the screen. She answered, only to hear a cold, rasping voice whisper, "We have someone you love. Come alone, or he dies." Elena's knuckles whitened around her phone, the voice hissing like smoke through the speaker. "We have someone you love. Come alone, or he dies." Her heart clenched, and without thinking, she whispered a name Alexander had never heard before. Lucian. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Who is he? She turned, but before she could answer, the boardroom windows rattled violently, the lights flickering out. In the chaos, shadows thickened like tar, spilling into the room. A hand of black smoke reached for Elena, curling around her waist. Elena! Alexander lunged, but the shadows dragged her back, swallowing her scream. In an instant she was gone, leaving only the echo of her phone clattering against the polished floor. Silence crushed the room. Alexander's chest heaved, every nerve on fire. He had faced takeovers, betrayals, assassination attempts in the corporate jungle, but nothing compared to the raw terror of losing her. He picked up the phone. The line was still open. Bring her back, Alexander growled, voice shaking with rage. A new voice answered, smooth and venomous, the rival CEO, Damien Cross. Mr. Kane, finally I have your attention. Alexander's jaw tightened. Cross had always been a vulture, circling his empire, waiting for weakness. Now he was more than a competitor. He was a weapon. You want her alive, Damien said, calm as if dictating a board report. Then surrender. Kane Global, your accounts, your empire. Sign it over to me or watch her die. Your choice. Alexander's grip nearly cracked the phone. You don't know who you're dealing with. Damien chuckled. Oh, but I do. The Ice King melted by a witch. It's poetic, really. Business and bloodlines both crumbling under the same weakness. Love. The call ended with a sharp click. Alexander stood frozen, every instinct telling him what came next. This wasn't a hostile takeover. It was war, and they had stolen his most dangerous weapon, and the woman who had taught him how to feel again. For hours he scoured his networks, private investigators, cybersecurity teams, even mercenaries. None could find her trail. Damien's reach, amplified by dark magic, covered his tracks too well. In the silence of his penthouse that night, Alexander stared out at the city, his reflection fractured in the glass. For the first time in his life, the numbers didn't matter. Stock prices, market shares, quarterly projections, none of it could buy her back. He slammed his fist against the window, glass trembling. Elena. At that moment he realized, this was no longer about power. It was about love, and he would not lose her. Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber beneath Damien's skyscraper, Elena was bound in chains that pulsed with runes, draining her strength. Across from her stood Damien smirking, and at his side, the cloaked warlock, Lucian himself. You can fight, witch, Lucian rasped, circling her like a predator. But without your bond, you're nothing. And he... Lucian's grin widened. He will come for you. When he does, he'll give me everything. Elena's chest rose and fell, defiance burning even through exhaustion. You underestimate him. Damien leaned close, his cologne sharp, his words colder. No, my dear. I know exactly how to break him. Love isn't his strength. It's his leverage. In his penthouse, Alexander's phone buzzed again. This time, a video played. Elena, chained, weak, bruised, looked directly into the camera, and Damien's voice cut through the feed. Midnight tomorrow. Sign it all over, or watch her die. Lucian raised his hand, shadows writhing. But Alexander stepped forward unflinching, golden sparks sparking from his fists. You want my empire? Alexander's voice cut like steel. Come and take it. The chamber erupted. Lucian's shadows lashed forward, but Alexander met them with golden fire that burst from his palms, shattering the darkness. Elena gasped, sensing it. His magic, awakened through their bond. Seizing the moment, she whispered an incantation. Her chains exploded into dust, power flooding back into her veins. Together they moved as one, her spells slicing through wards, his fists breaking through barriers, golden fire amplifying her light. Damien roared, hurling bolts of shadow-forged energy. Alexander countered with fire, his power instinctive yet precise, as though every hostile merger he'd fought had been training for this war. Elena's hand found his, their magic intertwining, blazing brighter than either alone. The chamber shook, stone cracking, shadows burning away. Lucian staggered, retreating with a hiss. Damien collapsed to his knees, blood staining his lips. For the first time, Alexander felt it. Not just power, but purpose. This wasn't about empires or numbers anymore. This was about her, about them. And then, silence. The enemies vanquished, the chamber broken. Elena leaned into him, her body trembling. "You..." She touched his chest, where golden sparks still glimmered beneath his skin. "You're not just a man anymore. You're part of this now." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Then let them come. I'll burn the world before I lose you again." But as they embraced, a low chuckle echoed in the ruins. From the shadows, Lucian's voice slithered, mocking and cold. "You think you've won?" This was only the beginning. The relic awakens, and now, the real war begins. The ruined chamber still smoked with the residue of battle. Alexander's arms held Elena steady, golden sparks flickering faintly from his skin as he glared into the shadows. Lucien's laugh slithered like venom. "Fools. Did you really think killing Damien mattered? He was a pawn. The relic stirs now, and with it, destiny. You cannot stop what has already begun." Alexander stepped forward, his voice hard as iron. "Then I'll rewrite destiny." Lucian raised both hands, shadows coiling into a storm. The walls shook, runes flaring as if the building itself bowed to his will. For a moment, the chamber seemed to collapse inward, a black void threatening to devour everything. Elena gripped Alexander's hand, her voice urgent. "The relic. It's not just power. It responds to bonds, to love. Together, we can end him." He looked at her, the Ice King no longer, his heart fully unmasked. "Then let's finish this." Their hands intertwined, her golden light surged, his fire roared, and together their magic erupted into a blazing torrent. White-hot, radiant, unstoppable. The void cracked, shadows tearing apart, as Lucian screamed. "No, this power, this bond, should not exist." But it did. Their love, forged through fire and betrayal, crushed his darkness. With a final earth-shaking cry, Lucien's body shattered into smoke, his essence burned away by their joined magic. The chamber collapsed, stone raining around them, but the storm was gone. The warlock was no more. Silence. Breathless, Alexander pulled Elena against him, dust settling like ash around them. "It's over." She shook her head softly, her lips brushing his ear. "No, it's only beginning." In the days that followed, the world whispered of upheaval. Kane Global emerged stronger than ever, Damien's failed coup exposing him as corrupt, his empire swallowed whole by Alexander's cunning. Stock markets soared, headlines hailed the return of the Ice King. But those who looked closer saw something different. Alexander Kane was no longer the ruthless figure he once was. He was still sharp, still relentless, but human, alive in a way no one had ever seen. By his side, Elena walked the halls not as a consultant, but as an equal, her presence commanding awe. Behind closed doors, boardrooms transformed into sanctuaries of strategy and magic. Elena's spells wove protections around their empire, while Alexander's vision expanded beyond profits into legacy. They weren't just running a corporation anymore, they were building a dynasty. One night on the roof of Kane Tower, the city sprawling below, Alexander slipped an arm around her waist. "You changed everything," he murmured. Her smile was soft, but her eyes held the weight of centuries. "No, Alexander. We changed everything. You showed me that love isn't weakness, it's the strongest force of all." For the first time in years, he felt peace. No mergers, no wars, no ghosts of his past, only the future, their empire, their bond, their love. But far away in the forgotten ruins of an older world, something stirred. The relic's glow pulsed faintly, as though waiting, watching. As dawn broke, Alexander and Elena stood hand in hand on the tower's balcony, the city bathed in golden light. A new empire had risen, one where power and magic walked together, and in the silence a whisper echoed on the wind. The Ice King and the Sorceress, rulers of a world reborn.